Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Very glad you're with us for the Friday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. We've made it to the end of another week, which is a good martini in and of itself. And today is probably the closest thing we have to our normal lineup of good, bad, and crazy. If you've been with us this week, you know that it's been all good a couple of times and a couple other days, absolutely no good martinis to be found. So today we think we do have good, bad, and crazy martinis. We're going to be looking at the latest insanity over in the UK. We'll also take a look at a significant change of plans for the Trump administration. And we're going to start with what we hope is good news on the inflation front, as well as just specifically the cost of eggs, because that's been one of the big issues over the first couple of months in terms of domestic costs. Ever since Trump took office, the liberal media suddenly got very interested in this issue, didn't care as much when Biden was president, but it was indisputable that just a few weeks ago, egg prices had hit an insane number. March 3rd, an average of $8.17 a dozen, according to the economic indicator website Trading Economics. Newsweek magazine cites them now, showing that has now consistently come down to $7.22 a dozen as of March 6th, then $6.08 by March 10th, $5.18 by March 12th, $4.90 on March 13th, and now, according to Trading Economics, Jim, $2.92 a dozen, which is still high, but it's way, way down from where it was less than a month ago. I have to admit that the last couple times I was in the grocery store and I happened to glance at the egg prices, I hadn't seen much of a decrease, so I'm not sure this is hitting all over the country at the same time, perhaps. The story from Newsweek also points out that there has been some extra efforts from this administration, from the Department of Agriculture, to try to mitigate the problems with all these chickens that the Biden administration killed. There was a $1 billion 5-point plan to tackle the price of eggs, which included an additional $500 million for biosecurity, $400 million in financial relief for affected farmers, $100 million for vaccine research, and they're also increasing egg imports from places like Turkey and South Korea. So efforts are being made, and it looks like they're paying off, at least for now, and hopefully they go even lower.
Wait, we're going to import eggs from Turkey and South Korea?
That's what it says.
Isn't that taking away jobs from American hens? I thought we didn't report for protectionist when it comes to that.
They're all dead. No, not all of them.
Glad. Well, yeah. Okay. So what we're seeing here is what happens when you have a bad bird flu outbreak amongst chickens. You have to cull the herds. Now, one of the arguments that was made was that the government had made it so easy to cull your herd that basically they'd reimburse you all the costs of not just the chickens and the losses you'd suffer there, but any equipment that you can't clean, stuff like that. There was an argument that actually kind of created a moral hazard, that it made it too easy to cull your herd and too profitable. You weren't going to have any losses there. Therefore, it was happening too quickly. The other argument is that, you're supposed to have your hens in ideally, spread out groups so that in case one group of hens gets a bird flu, it doesn't quickly spread to the rest. And there's some argument that some hen producers were having this. We're not doing that. A couple egg producers are having the same issue over and over again with bird flu outbreaks. Look, this is supply and demand, and thankfully, bird flu-free hens are now growing large enough to have eggs themselves and produce eggs, and supply is increasing, demand is about the same. I think when people will feel it is when Denny's, Waffle House, and all the great breakfast restaurants stop charging the 50-cent or 25-cent egg surcharge. I went into a diner up in Maryland at one of the robotics competitions a couple of weeks ago, and they too had a sign saying that we have a 50-cent egg surcharge on all egg dishes. In fact, at the NRI Ideas Summit, trying to prove the point that things were getting better in terms of egg prices, I asked the audience how many people you had eggs this morning. These folks have exceptional cholesterol, Greg, because very few people had eggs. But I don't think it was a cost thing. I think it was tied in with the conference. I think people may have almost gotten out of the habit of ordering eggs because of the high prices there. Look, there are certain things the government can do that can louse up the economy. I'm not a fan of these tariffs, other than maybe the argument for China. There are other things you're not supposed to do. But the egg thing was just a bird flu thing. You can point to some government policies that I mentioned earlier that can kind of exacerbate the problem, but sometimes you just have bad luck and bad things happen. And that bad problem is starting to subside itself. And thankfully, nationally, at that, according to the official numbers, egg prices will go down. Northern Virginia supermarkets, you get that memo? You see it? Okay, I'd like to see that over there myself. But all in all, My guess, and it had been the go-to anecdote for Democrats who wanted to rip into Trump. I think it was Paul Begala was saying, eggs are $7 a carton. And it's not that anymore. You have to kind of keep up you have to update your anecdotes. You have to update your examples of problems with the administration. So, hey, egg prices are coming down. That's great. That's great for America's breakfast. It's great for, all the, I was thinking about like people said the 50% egg charge on breakfast stuff, but everything, fried chicken, you got to put that stuff and roll it in the egg batter for the crispy outsides, and cakes, just about every bread, pastry. There's all kinds of things that are made with eggs. So it is, you're going to see the ramifications of a spike in a price of a product like that throughout the economy. Thankfully, things are coming down, and hopefully they keep coming down as as more and more healthy hens get into the egg laying business.
Yeah, sometimes those prices go up faster than they come back down. So hopefully these keep going further down. Almost $3 a dozen is still a lot, historically speaking, but it's obviously significantly better. This whole talk about egg prices reminds me of this awesome greasy spoon I used to go to at Hillsdale called the Palace. And you could, all the breakfast that involved eggs had 2 eggs, but you get the 3rd egg for a nickel. And so as a not flush with cash college student, the 3rd egg for a nickel was a very, very tempting offer, and it was a fantastic place. You had to wash your clothes when you got back to the dorm because the grease just permeated you. But, eggs for a nickel right now seems like a really, really, really good deal. And so hopefully we're getting close to that again. Another great deal, Fast Growing Trees. It's the biggest online nursery in the United States with thousands of different plants and more than 2 million happy customers. Fast Growing Trees offers a wide selection of plants, from fruit and privacy trees to shrubs, all tailored to your climate and space.
If you're annoyed by grocery prices, you can grow lemon, avocado, olive, or fig trees inside your home. And that's on top of the wide variety of houseplants that are available. You don't need to have a yard or a lot of space. You don't have to drive around to nurseries or big garden centers. Fast Growing Trees makes it easy to order online, and your plants will be delivered to your door in just a few days.
Yeah, and we've done that at our house. We've had the lemon, we've had the spices. I remember when Mrs. Kremis was incorporating those spices into our different dinners. Just great to have that. And it's a lot smoother and cleaner than trying to raise your own chickens and so forth. So this spring, get up to 50% off select plants at fastgrowingtrees.com/martini. Plus use the code Martini at checkout for an extra 15% off your first purchase. Visit fastgrowingtrees.com/martini and use the code Martini. Now's the perfect time to plant. Offer valid for a limited time. Terms apply. Again, fastgrowingtrees.com/martini. All right, Jim, on to our bad martini now. And there's a little bit of a shakeup in the Trump administration. One of the very first nominations that Trump made after becoming president-elect was that New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik would be his choice to be the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. No doubt as a result of her exquisite questioning of those prestigious college presidents about their anti-Semitism policies at Harvard and Penn, and I think it was MIT. But there's a problem, not with Elise Stefanik, with the math in the House of Representatives, because as of right now, and we've talked about this in context with the special elections, right now it's 218 to 213 in favor of the Republicans. They've got these 2 special House seats in Florida coming up next week. If Republicans win both of those, it's 220 to 213, but one of those is way too close for comfort for Republicans. The other one's looking a little bit better. And then if Stefanik, of course, were to take the job as UN ambassador, there'd be a vacancy for her New York State House seat, and Kathy Hochul has basically promised to play all sorts of calendar games to stretch that out and keep that seat vacant as long as possible. And, if you can lose a plus 30 seat in Florida, it's possible you could lose a pretty deep red seat in New York too. So Trump puts that on Truth Social yesterday. As we advance our America First agenda, it is essential that we maintain every Republican seat in Congress. We must be unified to accomplish our mission, and Elise Stefanik has been a vital part of our efforts from the beginning. I've asked Elise, as one of my biggest allies, to remain in Congress to help me deliver historic tax cuts, great jobs, record economic growth, a secure border, energy dominance, peace through strength, and much more so we can make America great again. With a very tight majority, I don't want to take a chance on anyone else running for Elise's seat. The people love Elise, and with her, we have nothing to worry about come Election Day. There are others that can do a good job at the United Nations. Therefore, Elise will stay in Congress, rejoin the House leadership, and continue to fight for our amazing American people. Speaker Johnson is thrilled, and I look forward to the day when Elise is able to join my administration in the future. She's absolutely fantastic. Elise Stefanik basically saying, yes, this is a team decision, or, a team effort. We got to get this really significant piece of legislation, basically the main foundations of the Trump agenda in this one bill that they want to get done here in the next few weeks and months. So, Jim, it's unfortunate. I think she would have done a good job there. We'll see who Trump comes up with as a replacement. But it's also pretty shrewd. I mean, you're looking at the numbers. You're not sure what would happen in the upcoming, plus down the road special elections. So if you want to get this thing over the finish line, this big border and extending the tax cuts and all that, you got to have the votes to do it. And they think it's going to be that close. Yeah, hang on a second, Greg. It's Nikki Haley on line 2. Just kind of wondering. Hey, I heard you need a UN ambassador. Anybody, But it is the end of March, and we don't have the, president's appointee there. And it always looked like she was going to sail through the Senate. So it's a little frustrating about this. Actually, I'm a little bit surprised that if they're going to make this move, that you didn't hold off a week just to see how those Florida elections go. The one for Gates's seat, they're probably safe. The 1st district up in the Panhandle. But even just don't like being outraised 6-1. Maybe it'll still be a safe Republican win, but ominous indicator of kind of a lackadaisical or lethargic GOP grassroots compared to the Democrats. And then they really are worried about Walz's seat. There's a poll that had the Republican down by 3 points, 10% undecided. So it's not, locked in yet, but it's again, not where you'd want to be. In what's it not only did Walz win with 66% of the vote last time around. I went back and checked 2022. He didn't have a Democratic opponent. Democrats just gave up that seat. So this is a, really dramatic set of circumstances. Earlier in the week, we talked about the flaws in the GOP nominee here. And there's one other aspect to this, which I hadn't really thought about, which was that, Greg, if you go all the way back, even before the formation of the 3 Martini Lunch podcast, back to 2009, Barack Obama picked the congressman from this district, John McHugh, as the bipartisan pick for Secretary of the Army. Created opening. Republicans did not win that special election back in 2009. It was a Democratic Congressman, Bill Owens, who then ended up winning for another term. And so that was 3, close to 4 years in which a usually Republican-leaning district had a Democrat. And so, it's upstate New York. She's won by wide margins. Trump carries this congressional district by wide margin. We shouldn't be that worried. Apparently they are worried. And apparently there is the Republican nominee who was going to run when Stefanik resigned her seat was not MAGA enough. There was somebody who was making noises about a MAGA primary challenge. Boy, it's been, we have to reset the counter to a number of days since GOP infighting has cost us a winnable race. I put it back to 0 again. So, because I had figured, if they won both seats in Florida, 220 to 213. Mike Johnson's never had a lead that big. That's a huge, a whole 7 seats. Of course we could give up one to get Stefanik in there. The other wrinkle to all this, there had been talk about Hochul up in New York was going to try to delay the special election as long as possible. Democracy dies in darkness, except when someone decides to strangle it in broad daylight in front of everyone. But now I find out that Sylvester Turner, the Democratic congressman from Houston, died more than 3 weeks ago. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has not declared a vacancy. No explanation for this. I don't think there is a justifiable explanation for this. We're about 1 or 2 steps away from the Monty Python dead parrot sketch. Sylvester Turner is dead. There is a vacancy. Whether or not the governor wants to acknowledgement, nobody's representing that district right now. I think when you do this, you should, most states have very clear laws in this. And, you declare the vacancy, this many days after the election is when you have the primary, this many days after the vacancy is when you have the general election. That's what they're doing out in Arizona. And it's, by the way, that seat's not going to get filled till September. So Republicans have, things should be okay. But I think you're right. The margin in the House is so tight that they're not sure they're going to have all the House votes that they want for reconciliation, which is kind of ominous. And a huge chunk of the Trump domestic agenda, particularly on fiscal and economic matters, is on that bill. So Stefanik has to stay in the House. And I think that's a sign. This was not the plan. This was not the way things were supposed to go. It'll probably work out just fine, or Trump will probably find somebody else to be the UN ambassador, and life will go on. But I think announcing it now, as opposed to waiting a week, strikes me as a sign of Republican nervousness about those seats, and maybe even about whether they could replace Stefanik with a Republican if there's that much infighting up there. Yeah, I think he is concerned about that. The flip side of that, though, is if you do lose Florida 6 and then you pull her back, do you look like you're panicking and oh my gosh, we got big problems here? It's kind of a PR thing. If you make the move before the election, it doesn't look quite as knee-jerk reactive to it. But I think that's clearly a factor that's playing in here. All right, Jim, on to our crazy martini now. And for that, we hop across the pond to the United Kingdom. Ever since July, the Labour Party there has not only held the Prime Minister's position with Keir Starmer, but they've also had a massive advantage in the House of Commons. And as he was campaigning, knowing that there would be an election at some point in 2024, Starmer tweeted out, "Knife crime is at an epidemic level and is ruining lives across Britain. As Prime Minister, I'll crack down on the sales of these lethal weapons once and for all. And when I announce a ban, you'll get a ban." Well, promise kept, I guess. Confirmed, he tweets out yesterday. "Ninja swords will be banned by this summer. When we promise action, we take it." So gun control didn't solve the problem, Jim. Now we got knife control. We got ninja sword control. I don't know if we're going to be banning ninjas in general, but I'm not sure they've leaped to the conclusion about what the real problem is here. It's just a kind of a farcical extension of our usual Second Amendment debate here.
So, Greg, first of all, this policy by Keir Starmer, whose name does not sound like that of a UK Prime Minister, feels like somebody Indiana Jones would have fought. Keir Starmer wants to take away ninja swords. Greg, this is an assault upon the Teenage Mutant Turtle community. So yeah, like the lesson of this is if you de-arm the population, you do not allow them to have firearms, you do not have a Second Amendment, people will find new and innovative ways to stab each other. And that's why you're saying, oh my goodness, we have this terrible outbreak of knife crime. Much better that everyone have some tool to defend themselves from someone who wishes to harm them than to disarm the population and know that if you walk out your door with a kitchen knife, you're probably going to defy. But apparently, it's not just the kitchen knives. It is the ninja swords. It is the katanas. It is, people are going to say, we should get rid of the throwing stars. But it turns out Britain has already banned the throwing stars. So they have not gone after nunchaku. So Michelangelo is okay. But Raphael, Leonardo, I suppose if you have a long enough staff, then Donatello is still okay in Britain, but we'll see. My favorite comment on this came from the Twitter personality, the Baroness, one of my favorites, and she said, if you have a ninja problem, it means the ninjas are not that good at their job. Because they're supposed to strike silently and disappear. Like, well, okay, we've seen too many ninjas going around. I think this demonstrates the absurdity of it, of these kinds of policies. That an armed populace is one, like the right to self-defense is like one of the most fundamental ones going back to the Magna Carta and a whole bunch of governments. Thankfully, less so here in the U.S., but not entirely. All around Europe, all around the world, governments have said, no, you don't have a right to have any tools to protect yourself. Trust us, you'll be fine. And then, of course, lots of people are dying. So even when you disarm the population, take all the guns, we probably saw the footage of Australia crushing all the guns after, forcibly disarming the population. Over there in the UK, it was only recently they armed their police officers. I believe it was, Robin Williams who famously said, when a British cop, catches you doing something, stop! Or I'll say, stop again. There's no stop if I'll shoot over in the UK. Look, you can keep running around. I think it was, some British celebrity was saying, oh, we need to have rounded tips to kitchen knives so that like people are always going to need edged things to cut their vegetables and their meat and everything else. People are going to need to cut down trees. They're going to have axe. People like you really can't get rid of blades in society. So what you really need to do is, and I don't think it's going to improve if you have a 7-day waiting period for the purchase of a katana. You don't really need ninja weapon control. You really need ninja control. You really need to have, the problem is that people want to stab each other. And if you have this problem, maybe one step in the right direction is to have a populace that has the capacity to defend itself from people who want to do harm to them. But that would require, that would require such a complete rethinking of life, everything over there, that it's much better for them to go down the list and find new things that, eventually, I imagine the British government will say, no more sharp sticks. You can no longer have a stick that has a sharp, pointy end to it. Eventually, at some point, they're going to ban darts, and then they're really going to have problems.
Yeah, soon we'll have blunt object control, fist control, I guess.
Knuckles, 7-day waiting period for the purchase of knuckles.
Are we going to have all sorts of discussion about what constitutes an assault sword and that sort of thing? I mean, Jim, if you go to the UK, you'd probably have to change your Twitter profile right now because you've got that kind of Wolverine thing going with the blades. They'd have you locked up in a heartbeat. They
are very dangerous plastic. The other thing I would just point out is there are a bunch of U.S. jurisdictions where the amount of blades that you could have, and obviously everybody's got stories of going through TSA and forgetting that they have a Swiss Army knife or something that's a really tiny edge blade, or wine openers, corkscrews. Eventually, they're going to ban that, and that will go very well with our new tariffs on foreign wines and stuff like that. Now you think about it, actually, you could probably get away with carrying a corkscrew almost anywhere, and that would hurt hard. Just kind of. The problem is you got to not just poke somebody, you then have to turn it and turn it and turn it. It takes a little bit, and then you pull out a big chunk of them. But anyway, so
it's hard to get a quick getaway if you're attacking with a corkscrew. But
when we start, there's a good point, and also the question is the person of good vintage? This is exactly the conversation we expected to have when we logged on today.
Exactly. Look, UK residents, I understand why you were fed up with the Tories last year, but now you got 5 years of this. These people are insane. You get what you vote for, and it ain't going to be pretty. So, Jim, you're actually out the first couple days next week, but we'll see you, I believe, on Wednesday.
See you Wednesday, and let's closing point for all dozens of our British listeners out there. If you've seen Grosse Point Blank, an ordinary ballpoint pen in the right place can do a lot of damage. Just think about the vulnerable spots on somebody's body and what sort of objects have the kind of structural integrity to, well, you get the idea. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you Wednesday.
Boy, this really took a dark turn. All right, Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please be sure to subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch if you don't already. Tell your friends to do it as well. Thanks for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. They really do help us out a lot. Keep them coming, please. Also, get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corombos. Have a fantastic weekend. Join us again Monday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.